Dirty old beggar pays man's meal with his last money, not knowing who he really is. When NBA superstar Stephen Curry stood at the McDonald's counter and realized he'd forgotten his wallet, a humble, elderly homeless man stepped forward, offering his last bit of money to pay for the meal. Little did the kind-hearted stranger know, the man he was helping wasn't just any person. He was one of basketball's greatest players, a down-to-earth celebrity who would make sure this act of kindness didn't go unnoticed. It was a sweltering afternoon in downtown Oakland as Steph Curry steered his white Tesla Model X through the Saturday traffic. His wife, Aisha, sat beside him, while their eldest daughter, Riley Elizabeth Curry, occupied the back seat. They were on their way to the local community sports center in Oakland, where the Warriors host casual games for fans and family. Conversation flowed naturally between them. Glancing at Riley in the rearview mirror, Steph caught her eye and asked, "You excited for the game today, Riley?" She nodded eagerly, replying, "Yeah. Will I get to play too, Dad?" Steph chuckled. "Well, it's more of a casual game for fans and family to watch, but maybe we can shoot some hoops afterward." Aisha turned in her seat to face Riley. "Your dad's right, sweetie. These community games are a bit different from the regular ones. It's more relaxed, more about having fun and connecting with people. It's a chance for everyone to come together and enjoy each other's company." Riley's eyes brightened with interest. "Will there be lots of kids there, too, Dad?" Steph laughed. "Absolutely. It's all about bringing families together." Then, with a thoughtful pause, he added, "Speaking of which, how do you think Ryan and Cannon are doing with Aunt Zora?" Aisha looked back at Riley and smiled. "I'm sure they're having a great time. You know how much Ryan loves being the big sister to Cannon. But why couldn't they come with us?" Riley's voice held a note of disappointment. Aisha replied gently, "Well, sweetheart, Cannon's still a toddler, and the long hours at a basketball game might be a bit much for him. But he'll be fine with Ryan keeping him company at home." Steph nodded in agreement. "That's right. And Aunt Zora will take good care of them. We'll have plenty of family outings when Cannon's a little older." As they continued driving, the conversation shifted between various topics: Riley's upcoming school year, Aisha's latest cooking experiments, and Steph's training routine. The family dynamic was clear in their easy banter and shared laughter. Suddenly, Riley piped up from the back seat, "Dad, I'm hungry. Can we grab something to eat before the game?" Steph glanced at the time on the dashboard. They were making good progress, and a quick snack wouldn't hurt. "All right, but let's keep it light. We don't want you feeling sluggish during the game, okay?" Riley eagerly agreed. Almost on cue, the golden arches of a McDonald's sign appeared ahead. Steph smoothly guided the Tesla into the drive-through lane, only to find himself behind several other cars. The line moved slower than expected, with each car taking longer than usual at the ordering window. Steph drummed his fingers lightly on the steering wheel, checking the time again. The heat outside was starting to creep into the car despite the advanced cooling system. "Looks like we might be here for a while," he remarked, his patience beginning to wear thin. Aisha noticed his slight impatience. "Yeah, I hope this doesn't make us late for the game." As the line crawled forward, the family continued their easy conversation, discussing the upcoming week and reminiscing about past family outings. Despite the frustrating delay, it gave them a quiet moment together in their otherwise busy lives. Just as they thought the wait might never end, something caught Steph's eye. A weathered, elderly homeless man was moving between the cars, asking for donations. His clothes were torn and his face bore the marks of hardship, yet he carried himself with a quiet dignity. Riley, always observant, leaned forward in her seat. "Dad, Mom, look," she said, her voice filled with concern. "That old man really needs help. Can we do something?" Aisha rummaged through her purse but frowned as she realized she had no small change. "I don't have any cash on me," she said apologetically. Steph opened his wallet and found only $20 inside. Surprised by the unusually small amount, he said, "I only brought $20 with me to the game. I wasn't planning on spending much." It made sense though. They were heading to a casual community event, and Aisha usually kept the cash for these outings. But as the elderly man neared their car, Steph found himself facing a quick decision. He knew he needed most of the money for Riley's meal, but the urge to help the man was strong. I hope this keeps the same warmth and natural flow while tweaking the word order slightly. The decision weighed heavily on Steph as he balanced his desire to help with the need to provide for Riley. Sensing her father's hesitation, Riley spoke up from the back seat, "It's okay, Dad. We can't eat much before the game anyway. We should give it to the man." Steph felt a surge of pride at his daughter's selflessness. After a brief moment of consideration, he rolled down the window and handed a $10 bill to the elderly man, who had now reached their car. The man's eyes widened slightly, a mixture of surprise and gratitude crossing his weathered features. "Bless you, child," he said, his voice carrying genuine appreciation. It was clear he didn't recognize the famous athlete helping him. As quickly as he had appeared, the old man vanished around the corner, disappearing from view in the Tesla's rearview mirror. The family sat in thoughtful silence for a moment, the brief encounter leaving a lasting impression. "That was a kind thing you did, Dad," Riley said softly from the back seat. Steph smiled, meeting her gaze in the mirror. "Sometimes, Riley, a small act of kindness can make a big difference in someone's day. We're fortunate, and it's important to help others when we can." Aisha nodded in agreement, reaching over to squeeze Steph's hand. The moment of generosity had shifted the mood in the car, reminding them all of the importance of compassion and giving. "Do you think he'll be okay, Dad?" Riley asked, still looking backward, trying to catch a glimpse of the man. Steph turned to face his daughter, her young face filled with concern. "I hope so, sweetheart. We've done what we could for now." The minutes ticked by as the Curry family remained stationary in the drive-through line. The patience they had started with was beginning to wear thin. Steph kept glancing at the clock on the dashboard, its digital numbers a constant reminder of the time they were losing. He exchanged looks with Aisha, who understood his growing concern about being late to the community event. She placed a reassuring hand on his arm, but even her touch couldn't fully ease the tension building in his shoulders. "This is taking way longer than it should," Steph muttered, his usual calm demeanor showing signs of strain. From the back seat, Riley's voice chimed in, "Are we going to miss the game, Dad?" Steph turned to offer a reassuring smile. "No, sweetie. We won't miss it. We might be a little late, but that's okay. Sometimes things don't go as planned." Unable to remain passive any longer, Steph made a decision. He turned to Aisha and Riley. "I'm going to see what's causing the holdup. I'll be right back." With that, he unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out of the Tesla, his athletic frame unfolding as he walked toward the speakerphone ordering system. The car ahead still blocked direct access, so he had to approach on foot. As he neared the ordering system, movement caught his eye. A McDonald's employee, looking slightly frazzled, hurried toward him. The young man, likely in his early 20s, was out of breath as he intercepted Steph. "I'm sorry, sir," the employee began, his words tumbling out in a rush. "We need to close the drive-through immediately. There's a broken-down vehicle at the front of the line." Steph raised his eyebrows in surprise. "A broken-down car? How long has this been going on?" The employee shifted uncomfortably. "It just happened, but we can't move the car. We're asking everyone to back out so we can clear the lane." His voice carried a note of apology. "We're really sorry for the inconvenience, sir. If you'd like, you can park and come inside to order." Steph nodded, understanding the situation, but feeling frustrated by the wasted time. He turned back to his car, sliding back into the driver's seat. Aisha and Riley looked at him expectantly. "What's going on, honey?" Aisha asked. Steph sighed, running a hand through his hair. "There's a broken-down car at the front of the line. They're closing the drive-through and asking everyone to back out." Riley, showing maturity beyond her years, suggested, "Maybe we should forget about the food so we're not late for the game." Steph thought about his daughter's words, then shook his head. We've already spent too much time here. Let's park and go inside instead. It should be quick. With that decision made, Steph carefully maneuvered the Tesla out of the drive-through line, reversing with precision to allow the cars ahead of them to exit. He then guided the sleek vehicle into a parking spot, the car coming to a stop under the afternoon sun. As they prepared to enter the restaurant, Riley announced that she wanted to come inside with Steph. Aisha, busy with a video call to Zora about Ryan and Cannon's activities, decided to stay in the car. "I'll wait here," she said, pulling out her phone. "I'll just be a few minutes." "Minutes," Steph assured her, as he and Riley headed toward the entrance. Inside, the fluorescent lighting starkly contrasted with the natural sunlight outside. As their eyes adjusted, Steph and Riley found themselves witnessing a tense scene near the side door. An employee, his face set in a harsh frown, was aggressively trying to remove several homeless individuals. Some were rummaging through trash bins, while others were simply sitting without making a purchase. The confrontation was drawing the attention of other customers, creating an uncomfortable atmosphere. Riley tugged at her father's sleeve, her voice filled with confusion and concern. "Dad, why is that man being so mean to those people?" Steph knelt down to Riley's level, recognizing this as a teaching moment. "Well, sweetheart, businesses have policies about who can be in their stores. But you're right. The way that employee is handling it seems unnecessary, even harsh." I've kept the tone natural and adjusted the word order slightly to maintain the flow. Riley furrowed her brow as she processed this information. "But couldn't they just be nicer about it?" she asked. Steph took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "It's a complex situation, Riley. The store has rules, but there's always a way to treat people with kindness and respect, no matter what." As they approached the counter, Riley's eyes widened in recognition. "Dad, look. It's the man from earlier." Sure enough, Steph followed her gaze and saw the homeless man they had helped in the drive-thru, now completing his order. A sense of quiet satisfaction washed over him, seeing that the man was using the money for food instead of cigarettes or alcohol. "See, Riley?" Steph said softly. "This is why it's important to help others when we can. We don't always know their stories or what they're going through." Riley nodded, her young face serious as she absorbed her father's words. As they waited to place their order, Steph continued the lesson. "It's important to be wise about how we help others," he explained. "But it's also important not to judge too harshly. Sometimes, being overly critical can stop us from helping at all." Riley thought for a moment, her brow furrowing. "So, we should try to help, even if we're not sure how it will turn out?" Steph smiled, proud of his daughter's insight. "Exactly. It's about the intention to do good, even in small ways, but also using wisdom at the same time. You'll learn that as you grow." He smiled at her and brushed her hair back. Riley nodded, still watching the elderly man. "Can we say hi to him?" Steph considered for a moment. "Let's order first, then we can see if he'd like some company, okay?" As they approached the counter, the cashier, a young woman with a friendly smile, greeted them warmly. "What can I get for you today?" she asked, her eyes widening slightly as she recognized Steph. Riley, excited to order for herself, spoke up first. "Can I have chicken nuggets and chips, please?" Steph nodded approvingly. "And I'll have a single cheeseburger and iced tea." The cashier quickly input their order and announced the total. It was at this moment that Steph reached for his wallet, only to find his pockets empty. The realization hit him like a missed three-pointer. "Oh no," he muttered, patting his pockets frantically. "I must have left my wallet in the car." By now, several customers had begun to recognize him as the famous Warriors player. Whispers started to circulate, adding to Steph's discomfort. Riley, noticing her father's embarrassment, quickly volunteered. "I can go get your wallet from the car, Dad." "It's okay. It's okay, sweetie," Steph said, forcing a smile. "I'll just run out to the car and grab it. You stay here, all right?" Steph took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. He was acutely aware of the eyes on him, several customers having recognized the famous athlete. As the whispers grew, the elderly man, still unaware of Steph's celebrity status, extended several worn bills, more than the $10 Steph had given him earlier. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he offered the money. "Please," the man said, his voice rough but kind. "I couldn't help but overhear. Let me help you. You were kind to me earlier, and I'd like to return the favor." "That's very kind of you," Steph began, his voice thick with emotion. "But we couldn't possibly," the old man interrupted gently. "Please, let me do this. You helped me when I needed it. Let me return the favor." Understanding the dignity in allowing others to give, Steph accepted the man's offer with a humble gesture. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "Your kindness means a lot. We'll pay you back, I promise." As the cashier processed the payment, Steph handled the exchange with care, acutely aware of how this moment might impact both the old man's sense of worth and Riley's understanding of human kindness. This moment, he realized, was teaching Riley and reminding him of the circular nature of kindness and the inherent worth of every individual, regardless of their circumstances. The beep of the cash register marked this unusual transaction, a poignant reminder that generosity can come from unexpected sources. After accepting their receipt, Steph helped guide the elderly man to step aside from the counter. They walked to the pickup station, and Steph explained, "I need to quickly grab my wallet from the car to repay you for this, sir. Please continue your meal at the table." Turning to Riley, he added, "Riley, would you mind waiting here with our new friend while I do that?" Riley nodded, happy to keep the kind old man company. Steph hurried toward the exit, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows as he moved outside. The afternoon sun was at its peak, and Steph approached his Tesla, where Aisha was absorbed in a video call with Zora, unaware of the situation unfolding inside. The parking lot had grown busier as more cars pulled in. Steph quickly grabbed his wallet from the compartment, calling out to Aisha, "Everything's fine, I just forgot my wallet. Be right back." As he re-entered McDonald's, Steph was met with an unsettling sight. The pickup station was empty, and so was the elderly man's table. There was no sign of either him or Riley. Scanning the restaurant, Steph's athletic instincts kicked in, and he picked up sounds of commotion from the side door. Following the noise, Steph discovered a scene that sent anger coursing through him. The restaurant manager, a stocky man in his 40s with a permanently furrowed brow, was physically removing the old man, despite his legitimate purchase. Riley was trying to intervene, her young voice rising above the commotion. "Stop it," she cried out. "He just paid for our meal. He's allowed to be here." The manager dismissed her protests completely, his rough handling of the elderly man showing no concern for his age or dignity. His actions seemed to reflect deep-seated prejudice, rather than any legitimate policy enforcement. Steph rushed forward, his voice carrying the calm authority of a team leader. "What's going on here? This man is our guest. He has every right to be in this restaurant," the manager growled, jabbing a finger in Steph's direction. "I don't care who you think you are in this restaurant. I make the rules, and I say that homeless trash doesn't belong here." Steph's jaw clenched, but he kept his voice level. "Standards that include mistreating paying customers? I'm telling you, this man is a paying customer, and he deserves to be treated with respect. There's no reason for this behavior." The manager's laugh was harsh and mocking. "Respect for someone who probably hasn't showered in weeks? Get real." His dismissive attitude created a tense standoff near the side door. "Homeless attire isn't welcome in my establishment. If you like him so much, then stay and eat outside with him." Riley, showing remarkable presence of mind, held up their order receipt. "Look, this proves he paid for our food. You can't kick him out. He was nice to us." The manager studied the receipt with obvious reluctance, then laughed it off. "Do you expect me to believe that he's paying for this?" The manager's gaze shifted to Riley, his expression softening slightly. "Listen, kid, I don't care who pays. You two can eat inside, but this old beggar stays outside because his attire looks like trash?" Steph placed a protective hand on Riley's shoulder, his voice low and controlled. Is this really the lesson you want to teach? That it's okay to judge and mistreat people based on appearances? For a moment, something like doubt flickered in the manager's eyes. This rephrased version keeps your story's tone, while adjusting the flow slightly. A flicker of something crossed the manager's face, but it quickly turned into a sneer. What I teach here is that actions have consequences, he sneered. And the consequence of looking like a bum is not being welcome in my restaurant. The elderly man, who had stayed quiet throughout the entire confrontation, finally spoke softly. I'm sorry for causing trouble. I'll go. Steph turned to him, his expression softening. No, sir. You have every right to be here. You paid for a meal, and you should be able to enjoy it in peace. But the manager's face twisted in disgust. Fine, if you want to eat with this trash, be my guest. But you can all do it outside. With that, he roughly grabbed the old man's arm and steered him toward the exit. Steph moved to intervene, but the manager's next words stopped him in his tracks. Touch me and I'll call the cops. I'm sure they'd love to hear how a homeless man is causing trouble in my restaurant. The threat hung in the air, a stark reminder of the power imbalance at play. Steph's mind raced, weighing his options. He could escalate the situation, making a scene that would definitely make headlines, or he could figure out a smarter way to address the injustice. As they were being ushered toward the exit, Riley's small voice piped up. Dad, this isn't right. We have to do something. Steph squeezed her hand, his resolve hardening. You're right, sweetheart. We will. But sometimes the best way to fight injustice isn't head-on. We need to be smart about this. Once they were outside, Steph and Riley helped the elderly man onto a bench near where a tow truck was escorting the broken car that had earlier blocked the drive-thru. The man's leg showed visible injuries from the manager's rough handling. Steph knelt beside him, examining the wounds with growing concern. His jaw tightened as he saw the bruising, the damage clear even in the fading afternoon light. Sir, I'm so sorry this happened to you, Steph said, his voice filled with genuine remorse. May I ask your name? The old man looked up, a mixture of pain and gratitude in his eyes. Frank. Frank Thompson. Riley, standing nearby, piped up, Mr. Frank, we're going to help you, right, Dad? Steph nodded, a determined look crossing his face. Absolutely. This kind of treatment is unacceptable. As Steph considered their next move, Riley's face lit up with an idea. Dad, why don't you do a live stream on Instagram? You could show everyone what happened. Steph's eyes widened at the suggestion. It was brilliant. A way to shine a light on the injustice without escalating the situation further. That's brilliant, Riley, he said, giving his daughter a proud smile. Turning to Frank, Steph gently asked, Mr. Thompson, would you be comfortable if I recorded what happened and shared it online? It might help prevent this from happening to others. Frank looked confused for a moment, so Riley jumped in to explain. It's like being on TV, but not real TV. People watch from their phones. Understanding dawned on Frank's face, and he nodded slowly. If you think it'll help, son, go right ahead. Steph quickly pulled out his phone, setting up the live stream. Riley helped Frank feel more at ease, chatting with him about his favorite foods and asking about his life. You're a bright child, Riley, Frank said, smiling for the first time. I can see why your father's proud of you. Before starting the stream, Steph took a deep breath to center himself. This wasn't about him or his celebrity status. It was about standing up for what was right and giving a voice to those who often go unheard. Once everything was ready, Steph pressed the button to go live. As viewers started joining, he introduced himself and briefly explained the situation. Hey everyone, he began, his voice calm and measured. I'm here with my family and a new friend named Frank. We've just experienced something that I think is important to share. It's about how we treat each other, especially those who might be going through tough times. As he spoke, Steph panned the camera to Frank, who offered a tentative smile. Riley, ever the social butterfly, waved enthusiastically at the camera. Mr. Frank, Steph said gently, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe share a bit about your day? Frank nodded, clearing his throat. Hello, he began, his voice shaky but growing stronger. My name's Frank Thompson. I'm currently homeless, and today I experienced both great kindness and terrible cruelty, all in the span of an hour. As Frank recounted the events of the day, everything from the drive-through kindness to the confrontation in the restaurant, Steph noticed the viewership climbing rapidly. Comments flooded in, a mix of shock, sympathy, and calls for action. What happened here today is not okay, Steph added, his voice calm but firm. No one should be treated this way, regardless of their circumstances. We're going to make this right. Steph knew this live stream was just the beginning. The story had the potential to spark a larger conversation about homelessness, dignity, and how society treats its most vulnerable. As Frank finished sharing his side, Steph noticed the number of viewers climbing exponentially. Suddenly, Riley's order number flashed on the screen. Looks like our order's ready, Steph said to the camera. We're going to head inside to pick it up. Stay with us? Steph, Riley, and Frank re-entered McDonald's to collect their food, but the manager reappeared as soon as he saw the phone camera. His face contorted with rage. You've been warned not to bring that homeless man in here, the manager spat. I told you he's not welcome. Steph stayed calm, addressing both the manager and the camera. We just want to collect our food. We can't leave him outside. He's a paying customer, just like anyone else. The manager's anger escalated as he realized he was being recorded. Cameras are forbidden in here, he protested, panic creeping into his voice. Riley, showing remarkable courage, addressed the manager directly on camera. I know you have store policy, sir, she said, her voice steady. But there's no policy that says you have to be rude and kick people out. The manager's response was damning. Sometimes you have to treat these people like donkeys, he sneered. Make them hurt and bleed. It's the only way to get them to listen. Steph's eyes widened in disbelief, but he quickly refocused on the camera. Did you hear that, everyone? He said, his voice tight with controlled anger. This is how this manager treats vulnerable members of our community. As the confrontation continued, fans started arriving at the location. The manager's bravado faltered as he realized who he was facing. The live stream had turned an isolated incident of discrimination into a public spectacle. Steph noticed Frank wincing in pain and knew they needed to wrap this up. We're going to end the live stream now, he announced. But this isn't over. We'll be following up to make sure proper action is taken and policies are put in place to prevent this kind of treatment in the future. As Steph ended the stream, he assessed the situation. The crowd was growing, and they needed to leave before things escalated. Turning to Frank, Steph extended a warm invitation. Mr. Thompson, let me introduce myself. I'm Stephen Curry, and this is my daughter, Riley. We're going to play at the local community sports center near here. Would you like to join us? We can get those injuries looked at properly. Frank's eyes lit up with a mixture of surprise and excitement. Nice to meet you, Mr. Curry, but are you sure? I wouldn't want to be a bother. Riley chimed in enthusiastically. Please come, Mr. Frank. It'll be fun. With Frank's grateful acceptance, they began making their way toward the Tesla. But their path was soon blocked by a group of eager fans, clamoring for autographs and photos. Steph handled the situation gracefully, signing a few hats and taking select pictures while explaining his need to tend to Frank's injuries. I really appreciate your support, he said, but we have a medical situation here that needs attention. I'd appreciate it if you would let us handle this privately so we can attend to Mr. Thompson's wounds quickly. The fans, sensing the gravity of the situation, respectfully stepped back, allowing Steph, Riley, and Frank to make their way to the car. As they approached the Tesla, Frank's eyes widened in awe at the sight of the vehicle's falcon wing doors. This is quite a chariot, he remarked, a hint of amazement in his voice. Riley giggled as she helped Frank into the back seat. It's cool, right? Wait till you see it drive. The car ride was quiet as Steph reflected on the day's event. What had started as a simple family outing had turned into something much more meaningful. His priority now was ensuring Frank's comfort and safety. I hope this rephrasing works for you. It keeps the same flow but with a few adjusted sentence structures for variety. During a break in play, Steph overheard Frank enthusiastically explaining some of the game's finer details to Riley. "See how they're setting up that screen?" Frank said, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "That's to give the shooter some space." Riley nodded, clearly intrigued. "Wow, Mr. Frank, you really know a lot about basketball." Frank chuckled, a hint of his younger self shining through. "Used to play a bit in my day. Not like your dad's level, of course, but I love the game." As the evening went on, Steph found himself more aware of Frank's presence. It was no longer just about the game, it was about the unexpected connection they'd forged, a reminder of how one small act of kindness could grow into something much larger. After the final buzzer, as fans began to file out, Steph gathered his family and Frank. The air was thick with unspoken emotions as they stood together, the empty court stretching behind them. "I've been thinking," Steph began, his voice calm but sincere, "Mr. Thompson, we'd like to help you get back on your feet. Not just for tonight, but for good." Frank's eyes widened, a mix of hope and disbelief crossing his face. "You've already done so much," he said softly. Aisha spoke up then, her tone gentle but firm. "We have the means to help, and we want to. Everyone deserves a chance to rebuild their life." Riley, sensing the gravity of the moment, added her own heartfelt plea. "Please let us help, Mr. Frank. You're our friend now, and we can't just leave you back on the street." Steph smiled warmly, looking at the older man. "We have an apartment nearby," he said. "If you'd like, you can stay there for now. Just until we can help you find something more permanent. My assistant will take care of the arrangements." The older man looked up at him, disbelief and gratitude filling his eyes. "Are you sure? I don't want to trouble your family," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Steph shook his head, his smile unwavering. "You're not troubling us, Mr. Frank. You deserve to be cared for. We'll help you get settled while we figure out something more permanent. Don't worry about a thing." "Thank you," Frank whispered, tears welling up in his eyes. "You don't know how much this means to me." Steph placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's the least we can do. My assistant will be in touch soon, and we'll get everything squared away." Overwhelmed with emotion, Frank could only nod, tears shining in his eyes. As they left the sports center, the cool night air was a refreshing change from the warmth of the interior. Steph felt a deep sense of purpose settling over him. They had faced injustice and responded with compassion, transforming a moment of cruelty into an opportunity for lasting change. The stars twinkled above them as they walked toward the car, a reminder of the vast possibilities ahead. Steph knew there would be challenges, but in that moment, under the Oakland sky, a new chapter was beginning, not just for Frank, but for all of them. This version keeps the flow and tone natural while adjusting the phrasing slightly for smoothness and clarity.